Everybody, and happy March 1st. We are here for my research methods class for week number 8. That was a fun trailer. I don't know if any of you else, there's always like one ad at the beginning. That was fun. It looked like a good movie. I was watching it with excitement. But good morning or afternoon at this point, sorry. I hope everyone is doing well and hanging in there. Again, hard to believe that it's March already. We're halfway through the semester and definitely kind of plugging along. We're here in week number 8. So I want to take a couple of minutes, talk about last week, give you a little bit of feedback, make sure you're feeling good about the discussion and materials from last week, and then I will talk about the things we have due this week, which also includes our second exam. So a little bit of tips and strategies and things related to that. And let's go ahead and head over to Canvas together. And as always, if you have any questions throughout this, put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them for you. And I'm at home, so forgive me if a cat or a dog or whatever comes into our stream today. It's kind of the fun part of being at home sometimes is my cats every now and then will come join me. Now that I've said that, they'll probably stay a million miles away. But last week, if we go back, last week for week number 7, I just want to take a moment to talk about the discussion for last week. So last week we were looking at discussion number 7, and I hope you had a fun time with this, getting to take the ice cream quiz. But let's start from the beginning here. So the first thing that you were in charge of doing is operationalizing coffee intake using 3 different types of measures. And a lot of you did a beautiful job of this. A self-report measure, most common thing people said would be, this could be me just reporting how many cups of coffee I have a day or a week or whatever. An observational measure, the most common one that people said was like sitting outside of a Starbucks or Coffee Bean or sitting outside of a coffee shop and observing people buying coffee and how many cups do they come out with. And a physiological measure, we could measure the effects of caffeine on things like heart rate and different like physiological kind of instruments and measures. Really nicely done on the first question. Most of you did a beautiful job. And I think as far as I remember, everybody got full points on question 1. It was the second part that tripped a few people up, but a lot of you did, again, a beautiful job. I hope you enjoyed the little bit of an ice cream test. Coffee and vanilla were the 2 most common flavors that people got. And I enjoyed your descriptions. A lot of you saying that like, it kind of fit, or maybe that kind of ice cream wasn't actually your favorite. So not a lot of stuff in terms of like reliability and validity here. I was hoping that you would really think critically about this. This quiz is not very reliable. Kind of so-so. I mean, in a way it could be worse. But what I was looking for you to talk a bit about is stuff like test-retest reliability. That you could have somebody take this test and then take it again like a month or 2 later. And if it had good reliability, they should, in theory, get the same answer, right? And so kind of looking at that as one way that you could quantify the reliability or maybe test that in some way. I think test-retest reliability was probably your best bet. And then validity was another one that I was looking for you to talk about. So with validity, you're looking at, does this test actually measure what it's been designed to measure? And so an ice cream test of personality, does ice cream actually capture the complexity of personality? Now, probably not, right? There are lots of these. There's like the Oreo personality test, the ice cream test, the cookie test, all these foods. But they're not really capturing personality necessarily and not overly valid. And I wanted you to think specifically about the criterion validity of this quiz. How could we take this and maybe test or establish the criterion validity? And I wrote this out in my notes here just to share with you, and I have it right here. I'll read it to you. So I said this test isn't overly valid. Ice cream isn't actually measuring personality, right? And what we could do is have a sample take the quiz and select an ice cream type that got a lot of people. As I mentioned, coffee and vanilla ice cream were the most popular. So let's say if we choose coffee, we would look at the characteristics that were associated with getting a result of coffee. And 2 of them were being hardworking and being inspiring. So what we could do then is measure those people who got coffee on those 2 things. Are they hardworking? Are they inspiring? And people who got the result of coffee should also then score highly on those those characteristics. That would help us to establish what we call criterion validity, right? Is this actually measuring what it's been designed to measure? We could look at the traits that are associated with each of the ice cream flavors and then measure those traits in people and see if they line up. If they don't line up with each other, it's going to indicate poor criterion validity, which I would imagine would be the result with this very, very informal test. So for the most part, again, I thought people did a really nicely done job. A couple of you, I wrote that I wanted a little bit more kind of critiquing the reliability and validity. That was the number one reason that people lost points. Or still not responding to a classmate. Don't forget to always reply to a peer to get those kind of easy 2 points for doing so. So again, I hope you enjoyed that. I think kind of fun. It's always fun to take little personality inventories. We tend to be drawn toward them as people, called the Barnum effect. We tend to want to believe in them. So I hope that you thought this was interesting. I think a good way to start critiquing and thinking about reliability and validity. For this week, we're building on everything. Again, we're going to continue to build the rest of the way. And this week, we're looking at chapter 7. And so for chapter 7, if we click on the lecture, of course, read chapter 7 in the textbook. That's probably your first thing you're going to want to do and your best bet. But what we're looking at here is the idea of sampling. Sampling, generalizability, external validity, how we can get different kinds of samples, what is a sample, when is a sample biased, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're looking at in chapter 7. So I wrote a little summary here about what is generalizability, what is a population versus a sample, when is a sample biased. We do a lot of very biased sampling research, and so something to think a little bit about. What are some sampling techniques? How could we maybe even opt for a biased sampling technique? What is the most important in external validity? And are larger samples better than smaller ones? Sometimes, right? On the Beyond the Book page, I found a little video here that I thought was helpful related to random sampling, and a little bit more on non-probability samples, and I have a little video that I found on that. Sometimes hearing it said by somebody else in a different way can be helpful, so I thought that those might be nice for you. I hope you click on those, watch those. Any little thing that I put in here is going to be helpful for you. And then finally, on the last page, as always, here are the key terms that you need to know for chapter 7 for the exam. So make sure you know all of these terms from this chapter for the second exam that we're taking this week, which we'll talk about in a minute. The other thing that we have going on this week, as usual, you have a discussion. So let's take a look at discussion number 8 together. And as always, watch my video. I kind of introduce the topic, give you a little bit more information, answer all of the questions in the prompt. Be detailed in your responses. Think of them as little mini papers. If you're consistently losing a point or two, try and elaborate. Give me a little bit more. And that way, you hopefully will get closer to full points. Also, don't forget that peer response is worth 2 points. That's going to be really a helpful 2 points, right? You don't want to lose those. They're probably the easiest 2 points to get. So for this one, we're looking at sampling, kind of building on the topic that we have for this week. So imagine that you're planning to estimate the price of the average book at our college bookstore. The bookstore carries 13,000 titles, but you plan to sample only 200 books. You will select a sample of 200 books, record the price of each one, and then use the average of the 200 books to estimate the average price of the 13,000 titles in our bookstore. Assume that the bookstore can give you access to a database that lists all 13,000 titles that it carries, and based on this information, I want you to answer the following questions related to the content in Chapter 7. So first, what is the sample in this study, and what is the population of interest? So kind of looking at sample versus population, bringing that knowledge in. Number 2, how might you collect a simple random sample of books? Make sure you explain and elaborate. Number 3, choose one of the following options and discuss how you would collect that type of sample. You can go with a systematic random sample, a cluster sample, a multi-stage sample, or a quota sample. You can pick your poison, whichever one you would like, and then you're going to discuss how you would go ahead and collect it from that perspective or from that type. And then number 4, discuss one possible way that you could end up with a biased sample when conducting this study. Hint, be sure to discuss how the sample could be gathered and how the type of bias that could occur. So I'm having you kind of think about this in relation to books, right? Books, which are always expensive, but think about our bookstore. If we had 13,000 titles and you were sampling 200 of them to get an average, thinking about what is the population versus the sample, how could you conduct a random sample, and then kind of building on that with these last two questions. I think it's kind of a fun thing to think about, and it would be interesting to see what the average cost of a textbook would be. Probably way too much, I would assume. So make sure when you're ready to do this, you hit reply and answer my question. And then, of course, don't forget to reply to a classmate as usual. The other thing that we have due this week is we do have exam number 2. Now remember, the exams are taken right here on Canvas. So when you're ready and organized and you've studied and you have quiet space and you have internet connection and everything is all aligned and you're ready to go, you're going to click on exam number 2. And you are taking this on here. It's worth 50 points. There are 48 questions. You have 60 minutes to do it. And last time this was more than enough time for the vast majority of you. A lot of you finished in quite a bit under that time limit. And this is the same style and format, same kind of expectation is what you can have. So this is due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. And just like exam number 1, you have 60 minutes to complete it. You only get one attempt, so make sure that you are ready and organized before you begin. Again, make sure you have good internet, a quiet space to take it. You have an hour to take it, and that you have studied and prepared. If you haven't studied and you're trying to look up every single answer, you are going to run out of time or be very tight on time. So make sure that you have, reviewed things with your notes, that maybe you've written out the study guide or typed it out, whatever works for you. If you did really well on the last exam, prepare the same way. And if you wish you had done a little better, then maybe prepare a little bit more or a little differently this time. Canvas will stop you at your deadline, so just make sure you're mindful in watching the time. And then you'll click Submit Quiz when you are finished and ready to submit your attempt. You will get a score right away, and you'll know what you got right and wrong, which is nice. You don't have to wait for your grade. So the exam, again, worth a lot of points. And this one, if we go back, as always, I have given you a study guide, which is right here underneath. So if you click on, right above, I want to move it underneath in a minute here. I like to have it below. So the study guide, here are all the terms that you need to know for this test. So this test is on Chapter 3, Part 1, Chapter 3, Part 2, Chapter 5, and then Chapter 7, which we're covering this week. So basically 3 chapters, though this one was split in half. So if it's on here, make sure you know these terms, that you could answer a question about it, that you understand it well enough to answer questions about it. And review these. Again, if it were me, what I would probably do is go through and type out each one of these terms, making sure that I knew each one of them. I'd review and study them with flashcards or something like Quizlet. That way they are familiar and you're comfortable with it, and you can apply it to a question on the exam. As I mentioned before, if you are trying to understand and look it up and find the answer, you're really definitely going to be hurting on time. So if it's on here, make sure you know it. If it's not on here, you can let it go. This is plenty. And just like the first exam, there's no trick questions. If you study, you should do really well. A lot of you did beautifully on the first exam. And if you prepare the same way, hopefully this one will turn out the exact same. Again, I would be thrilled if every one of you got an A. And I think if you prepare with that study guide, set yourself up for success, you should be okay. All right, so this week, read Chapter 7 in the book. Read through the lecture. Watch those little videos I put in. They're going to help. All right, watch my lecture video where I lecture on Chapter 7. Complete the discussion, study and complete exam number 2. And then, of course, you have the optional extra credit number 8, which I will give you here in just a moment. But are there any questions at all for me at the moment? Any questions at all about the materials for this week, about the exam, about any of that kind of stuff? I do have a couple of reminders for you while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions. Our next Twitch live stream will be on Wednesday, March 8th at 12:30 p.m. like usual. Okay, I'm going to put that here in the chat. So our next Twitch live stream will be next week, 1 week from today, on Wednesday the 8th at 12:30. I'd also like to remind you, which I do every week, to please double check your subscription status. I put that in the chat as well. A lot of you have fallen off. I have 250 students right now, and 13 people, only 13 people are subscribed. So all of the rest of you I'm having to look up. So if you have the chance or opportunity, I would really appreciate you renewing or figuring that out. You want to know if I got snow? I didn't get snow. I was so sad. I was so excited for snow. I saw a TikTok yesterday and it was this guy like running around preparing for snow, and that was totally me, and then it never happened. We maybe had like 5 minutes of a little bit of like hail, and it collected a little bit on our chairs and trampoline in our yard, but then it melted super fast. A lot of people got snow though. Did any of you get snow anywhere? I have family in Moore Park, and they had a lot of hail where like everything was white. The mountains are just covered in snow, which is wild. I know Big Bear got something like 70 plus inches of snow over the last week, and all those roads are closed. It's such a mess up there. But sadly, I live in Simi, and sadly, no snow for me here. Small amount of snow in Newberry Park. I heard that in Thousand Oaks there was even a little bit of snow. Just for one morning. I know, I was so jealous. I watched and watched. I watched the weather. I stepped outside a million times. Sadly, no snow. And then I thought it'd be fun to take the kids up to the mountains, but then everything is closed. It's really hard to get up there right now. I probably wouldn't be able to get out either. No snow in Agora Hills. We got a little bit of hail. Ton of hail in Westwood near UCLA, and it broke her windshield. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's serious hail. When I lived in Colorado, it was kind of like that. Like the hail would be damaging. That's intense, though. It definitely strange weather for us. And sadly, it looks like the rain is kind of done for now, which might be good. It gives everything a chance to dry out. Though I love the rain, so if it rained every day, I wouldn't be sad. But it looks like we're done for a little while, which might be good. My kid's softball has been canceled for like a week and a half because it's just been raining and raining and raining. So, uh, yeah. Oh, I have to give you the extra credit question. I'm just sitting here talking. Some of you are like, "Come on, where's my extra credit question?" Let me give that to you, and then I can see if there are any other questions at all. I typed this out, so let me put it right here in the chat so that you have it. All right. So the extra credit question for week number 8. Sorry, I'm just sitting here chatting about the weather, right? I love to talk about the weather and food and football. So the week number 8 extra credit question is, what is random sampling? Describe and define. So tell me, what is random sampling? Kind of describe it or define it. You could give me an example if that's something that makes sense to you. And then you'll click right here, since we're in week 8, you'll click on optional Twitch extra credit number 8. And then up here at the top, start assignment. And then that'll bring up this text box where you can type your response in the box and then hit submit. And then you get the little confetti burst and presents in there as well. And this is due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m., just like the exam, just like all the materials for this week. So get going on everything for week number 8. If you have any questions about, last week or anything with the exam or anything this week, I will hang out for a few minutes if you want to put it in the chat. And then don't forget, if you do have the opportunity to go renew your subscription or subscribe, that would save me some time. So thank you for that. And otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Hard to believe again that it's March. Spring break is coming up. We're like a month away from spring break. If any of you are starting to get a little burnt out, it is definitely coming. So hang in there, and I'm going to minimize my video, but I will hang out for a little while. If you have any questions, I will be here. Okay, so have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for all of you who joined me live. And I'm still here if you do have any questions for me. Bye, have a good week. Thank you. You as well. See you next week. Have a wonderful week.